I remember the day that I qualified as a lawyer. I had been working so hard towards that moment for years, late nights, exams, assessments, having to prove myself over and over to people who weren't easily impressed. And when the day finally arrived, I felt relieved and I also felt excited. But those feelings were quite short lived because as soon as I hit the milestone, I started thinking about the next thing. I started thinking about the fact that this is just the start of the journey. What do I need to do next? How do I need to show up as a lawyer? What is it going to look like? What are the goals that I need to set for myself? And my mind started racing towards what was next. So much so that I didn't really give myself time to savor in the moment of achievement and really recognizing that this was a milestone marker in terms of success. And if you are someone who is a high achiever who hits goals or achieves milestones but doesn't take stock or doesn't take time to really take it in, I want you to lean into today's episode because I want to talk about the step that most people are not taught and do not take. That is really important if you want to make sure that as you are moving forward and setting new goals, they are coming from the right place and the right motivation so that you're not building a version of success that no longer serves you, but instead you're being intentional about building your definition of success. Welcome to the Career Changemaker podcast. Do you want clear direction about your next chapter, but find yourself overthinking every move and worrying about getting it wrong? If so, you're in the right place. Hey, I'm Janine Esbrand, corporate lawyer turned career coach, keynote speaker, and mother of two. And I've discovered how to gain real career clarity and build an impactful career on my terms without sacrificing security or burning out. If you're ready for aligned career options, confident decisions, and work that protects your peace, close that comparison tab on LinkedIn, grab your notebook, and let's dive in. Before we get into it today, I want to let you know that if this episode resonates with you and if previous episodes on this podcast have been resonating and you like the way that I break things down, you like my perspective, you like how I share things, come and join us in my exclusive email community. This is the space where I go a little bit deeper between episodes, where I share a bit of the behind the scenes, give you some of the thoughts and perspectives that I have applied personally and also what I am sharing with my clients. It all goes down in the email mailbox. So head to the show notes, click the link, come and join us over there. And I look forward to sharing with you more inside of that community. So I had wanted to qualify as a lawyer for years. I had set the goal when I was about 8 years old to become a lawyer. And if you've ever heard me share the story of me having a heated discussion with my mum when I was 8 and her getting so frustrated with my response that she said, "Oh, you should be a lawyer." That is really where the journey began. She sowed the seed, and even though there were no lawyers in my family, no one that I knew that were lawyers, I took what she said and I ran with it. And I watched legal dramas and got encouraged by them, and then decided that I wanted to be a lawyer. And part of my motivation for that was what my mum had said. But also, when I was around 15 years old, a careers advisor told me that it would be too hard for me to make it as a lawyer. And me being me, I wanted to prove her wrong. So part of my motivation was, yes, my mum said I could do it, but also this careers advisor said that I couldn't. And so therefore I'm doubling down and I'm going to make it happen. So I did that. I put my head down, I did the hours, I navigated the pressures, and then was able to ultimately qualify. And, people congratulated me. People will say that, you earned it, you worked really hard. But beneath the surface, once you hit the milestone, there can sometimes feel like there's this feeling of flatness, like the anti-climax of the moment feels kind of flat. And it's a bit strange, right? Because you're like, oh, I thought it was going to feel different, but it doesn't. I remember hitting the milestone, people congratulating me, people telling me that I've earned it, and me smiling and saying thank you, but beneath it all, feeling like how I thought I was going to feel after working towards this milestone for 10 years is not how I feel right now. But it wasn't something that I could articulate or share with others. It wasn't something that I could say, oh, I don't feel great about it, or I'm not excited about it, because they all saw the struggle. They all saw what it took to get there. And so I just kept it to myself, the way that I was feeling, the fact that it was kind of like a anti-climax, and I wasn't as excited about this next season of my life as I thought I would be. And what I've come to understand now that I didn't understand then is that part of the reason why I felt that way is because I wasn't giving myself time to fully pause and process what had just happened. I didn't really feel the success because I was in my mind thinking about the next thing and thinking about what else I needed to be striving towards. So my mind had already jumped ahead to the next set of expectations, what I'd need to prove now, who I'd need to prove it to, how I'd need to show up in my law firm. And all of those thoughts were robbing me from taking the moment and really taking time to process what had just happened. I went straight from achieving to being on autopilot onto the next demand. And I treated the next step like it was already laid out for me, right? It's like, okay, you've done that. Now you need to be a trainee. And as a trainee, you need to do this. And then in a few years, you're going to get a promotion. And then a few years after that, you're going to do the next thing. And then ultimately, you're going to make it to partner. And no one really said to me, hold on, pause. Now that you've reached this milestone, what is your goal, or where do you see yourself? People just assumed that I would just follow the traditional path. And I assumed that I would just follow the traditional path. And I think so many people are funneled into the next step of their career journey because it is the natural next step or the common next step, or because they don't know what else to do. And so they just move forward. And what I've realized after years of navigating building out a career that doesn't look traditional is that it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay to pause and really unpack and name and note down what you have achieved. Sometimes when we're looking at our achievements, we look at them and we say, yeah, I did that. But what we don't do is count the cost of getting there. Count the cost of getting there, all of the things that you have sacrificed, all of the things that you have to do, be exposed to, pursue in order for you to hit the milestone that you've hit. We don't always acknowledge that. We just say, oh, yeah, it's great. I worked hard. But do we quantify? Do we quantify the cost of that hard work? Do we really sit with it and recognize how much you did put in to getting to where you want to be? Because if we did spend the time to really unpack all that was required of you in order to hit the milestone that you've hit, you would, one, appreciate it more, and two, not be so quick to just jump to the next thing, right? And you'd give yourself the opportunity to really decide, what am I willing, or what do I want to put time, effort, and energy into next in terms of a milestone, rather than just rushing into the next thing. So I think about that experience, what I recognize is that there is a belief that many of us hold as ambitious women that is essentially running the show, right? Many ambitious women are operating on the invisible belief that once you hit a milestone, the next one is already laid out for you. And your job is just to simply move with it. So once you do one thing, you have to then follow on and do the next thing. And that belief comes from the old school way of thinking when it comes to a linear career path that trains you to treat every achievement as a rung on the ladder, or a part of the conveyor belt, right? It's not treated as a choice point. It's treated as a stepping stone to get to the next thing. And so because we have been conditioned to think about careers as a ladder and you starting at the bottom and working your way up, no one has really ever talked about or taught us to take a pause at each juncture and ask whether or not you want to keep climbing. Do you want to go from one rung to the next? Or do you want to choose a different direction? That question isn't often asked enough. It comes to people when there's a moment of crisis, whether that is burnout, whether there is a personal thing that has happened, whether that's loss, that's grief, that's, an unexpected event that caused people to just pause, take stock, and ask, okay, do I still want to be doing this? We saw that much happen a lot in COVID, where lots of people who had been going through the motions and doing things one way realized that, hold on, there's a different way to do this now that we've had a global pandemic and we have worked from home. It is possible. Maybe I consider trying to do something with more flexibility, right? So sometimes we need a pattern interrupt in order for us to see that the path that we're on isn't the path that we want to continue to be on. But instead of us waiting for that external factor, we can do it ourselves. We can do it ourselves. So, in addition to noticing when your beliefs are running the show, you also want to get into a habit of letting yourself feel success. Letting yourself feel success. Be deliberate. Build a habit of stopping to actually feel and recognize a win before you let yourself move on instead of rushing straight past it. I remember one of my coaches would say once I had completed the actions that were required to get the result that I wanted in relation to certain milestones in my business, that I would need to treat myself, either buy myself something or give myself permission to do something that I really wanted to do, because the outcome is sometimes what we wait for, right? We put in all the work, but we wait to see, do we get the job, or do we get the promotion, or does the business take off, or do I land the clients? And it's only when we see the external marker of success that we are willing to take a little bit of time to acknowledge and celebrate. But what I want to encourage you to do is to get into the habit of looking at success as you putting in the work. You putting in the work. The outcome can be seen as a bonus, but when you put in the work, you're growing as an individual. You're going to be learning things regardless, right? So seeing success as partly the journey and not just the destination. And then when you are able to acknowledge your role on the journey and what has been a byproduct of that, allow yourself to let the achievement land, right? Let it land. Don't skip over it. Don't diminish it. Don't say, oh, it was nothing, or oh, it was quite easy, or it wasn't just me. Take it, accept it. When you have feedback from other people, take it and say, thank you. I appreciate that. And for some, it might be helpful to journal. It might be helpful to reflect your thoughts, but find a way for you to process what just happened and for you to acknowledge it for what it is and the time and energy that you took to put into it. And when you slow down enough to acknowledge what you have achieved, what you've done, you're also in a good headspace to reassess on your terms what needs to happen next, and do so season by season, right? Sometimes you assess where you've been and how you thought you were going to feel when you arrived at this juncture isn't necessarily how you feel. What you thought you would want when you arrived here isn't necessarily what you actually want. We can only make goals and set intentions based on the version of who we are in that moment, but we don't know how much we're going to change in the 6 months, in the year, in the 3 years that passes between when we set a goal and when we actually achieve it. So therefore, give yourself permission to adapt and to change your mind and to change course if you really desire. Right. The other thing to think about is how quickly things are changing. So we can make plans and we can set goals, but the landscape of life and the way we do things is changing so rapidly that you may need to adapt and you may need to pivot, and that is absolutely okay. So I just want to encourage you that if you have been feeling like you are a bit lost or you're a bit unsure and you've hit milestones, but it isn't feeling how you thought it was going to feel, you are absolutely not alone. Now it's for you to determine how much of a decision are you going to make in terms of moving forward? What ownership are you going to take in terms of the direction that you go now and next? And how quickly you do that. So, what I really want you to take away from this episode is that milestones are not the problem. Setting goals are not the problem, but believing that what has been set is set in stone, that is where the challenge lies. Not giving yourself the ability or the permission to pivot and change when you realize that needs to happen. That is where a lot of people find themselves in frustration, because they are on a path that they set for themselves or that others set for them, and it's no longer aligning, but they don't feel like they can step off of it. And so I want you to give yourself permission to Acknowledge how far you've come. Feel the feels of success and then redefine success if you so wish. Okay? Redefine success if you so wish. And if for you that looks like building out your own autonomy through building multiple streams of income, then that's fantastic. Looks like you taking that leadership role and climbing the ranks, that's also fantastic. If it looks like you making a lateral move and doing something completely different, kudos to you. Whatever it needs to look like for you, let it look like that. But the key here is you driving that decision and not letting the decision be driven for you. All right. That is what I wanted to share with you today. I encourage you to come over to our email community so you can be notified whenever new episodes drop and when there are new insights and new guidance that I want to share around making career transitions and you growing as someone who is taking ownership of your career. Okay, the link is in the show notes. I hope to see you in the email community. Until next time, take care of yourself. Bye. Hey, ambitious woman, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds to follow the show and share it with someone who may be quietly rethinking their next chapter? Also, please leave a review. It really helps this message reach more ambitious women ready for career clarity. And it lights me up to know that this podcast is helpful to you. Until next time, go and take one strategic step forward, and I'll meet you back here in a few days for another episode. Let's keep building.